All right, we are recording live with Mr. Ryan Veltri. It's almost like we just spent like 3 hours together yesterday talking about soccer and sports.
And here we are again. It's kind of funny how the
So
world.
I'll do the intro as per my as per my giant logo behind my head. Soccer expansion project. I want to find a way to bring on some experts and talk about some things. And Ryan is a good friend of mine and a long-time coaching colleague and friend. So I've got some questions for him, and we'll see how this goes. But this is our first time, and it will be live on the interweb at some point. Are you ready?
I think I am.
All right. So just to go through what we're trying to do here for the project, it's the idea of just having some insight and bringing on some folks that can, give a little community, and we're all in the same place. I think as humans, we find solace sometimes in groups, and that's how we are. So I want to find a way that we as coaches come together and talk about some stuff and see if we can fix the world. So Ryan, your playing backgrounds. So what did that involve for you?
I started when I was young. Not like many kids. I started when I was 4 in a little pee-wee league back in New Jersey, and kind of grew in love with the sport. And as time went on, I found bigger mountains to climb and better teams to play against. And then somehow I wound up playing soccer every chance I had. You want to know everything?
I mean that's good. I mean, in general, like, where did you end up? I mean, I was also going to ask you, and I don't know whether I've asked this before. I should have done if not. But were there other sports you were involved with? Like, did you just have this like competitive instinct that was in you, and you just go try everything, or was soccer straight away the number one?
Soccer was the first thing that I did. I dabbled in baseball, but it wasn't something that I enjoyed very much. I wrestled in middle school and high school, so I probably started wrestling when I was in 5th or 6th grade, and went all the way out through high school. I wrestled through high school, but soccer was my thing. Like, it was something I could do on my own. I go out in my front yard and juggle, and I spend countless hours doing that, or throwing the ball up in the air and trying to do bicycle kicks, or it was getting the kids around the community to play, or it was organized sports. And an opportunity to play on a lot of the different teams that I played on over time.
Yeah, and then so top club teams, and then college, right?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to play for a lot of pretty important people in New Jersey. The soccer background and the amount of coaches that I had was pretty essential to the growth and my development. And then wound up playing in college after having a pretty good high school career, and played at Lock Haven University.
Yeah. When did you get a sense that this sport that you loved playing and being around with was going to be something that you would want to be involved with from a coaching aspect? Was that young?
Yeah. So I started coaching when I was young, and I was in middle school, and I worked for the little pee-wee league or whatever it was called back in the day. And I started coaching then, and I really found a desire to do that, because it gave me an opportunity to see from a player's perspective on the field, but from a coaching perspective, I got to see what coaches might be looking for in attributes of players, and also the opportunity to kind of see the game from a different viewpoint than being stuck in the middle of the field. So I enjoyed that aspect of it pretty much.
Was there something, even though when you started teaching and coaching, even at a young age, was there something that all of a sudden there was just this? Was there a thing that just this felt warm to you? This was kind of cool, like that. Kids were responding to what you were saying. Did that start to hit you pretty soon?
Yeah, I mean, so started doing things when I got a little bit older, working camps to make money for the summer, and watching kids react to the things that I was asking them to do was pretty neat. I always enjoyed kids. I always have liked working with children and teaching, the aspect of teaching. So something that I was very comfortable with was soccer. So being able to teach kids those types of things came very naturally to me, and I always enjoyed those. So whether I was in high school doing camps, or college doing camps, or clinics, to even now, my favorite place on the field is on the sideline or in the middle of a session, running through a session with kids, and watching them kind of take what we've put down on a piece of paper and make it real life.
Yeah. Actually, one of my questions was what part of coaching, has you hooked? And it sounds like you just answered that, like
Yeah.
that, that gets you.
Yeah, I mean, so as coaches, we sit down, and maybe coaches don't do this, but I sit down and I write up a session from the beginning to the end. And when I first started coaching, it was even, what was I going to say during that session? So these are the remarks I was going to make, and these are the points that I was going to hit. And watching something go from a piece of paper or whatever was in my mind to watching players get out in the field and do it was really exciting, because sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And then as I got older, learning to adapt to those scenarios and create training sessions where it would also test myself and my own knowledge was a lot of fun. I'd
Yeah.
come home and write notes, or sit in the car after a practice and write those notes and analyze what happened and what worked and what didn't. And it just was what I did. And, I had a lot of good friends as I've gotten older that did the same thing. And we just, you and I have spent hours upon hours. Bev and I have spent hours upon hours just analyzing sessions or games. And, that was fun for us.
Yeah. Yeah. When did it take a jump for you in terms of sort of formalizing that coaching path in terms of coaching education and things like that? When did that hit you? And this is something you wanted to add to your resume?
When I first got hired as a volunteer, I realized that I knew a lot about soccer, maybe not so much about the education part, the coaching part. So pretty quickly on, after I'd graduated college and had my first volunteer position, and then getting hired through the local club that I learned a lot at, we started talking about how do we get better. And so what was the NSCAA at the time was offering, all these diplomas. So I was lucky enough to jump into the national diploma right away. And with that, took my time after I took each diploma, working my way through the diploma courses, and then and everything that was offered through the NSCAA, or what is now the United Soccer Coaches Association.
Yeah.
And that was really something that I would take the course. I enjoyed it. I met a lot of cool people, a lot of colleagues that we're still close to today, from all over the place. And we communicate still today about how our seasons are growing, or what's working, or what trends are happening. And it was really something that I was able to really take pride in, because I was learning the game from a coaching standpoint, and being an educator, it was kind of my continuing education credits towards something that I was really passionate about.
Yeah. How much was the course itself in terms of value versus the camaraderie and the the community that was built there? Because I know I've only done a few. It's not been a while, but I know you've spoken highly of some of the relationships you've formed. I mean, you already alluded to it, but it sounds like it was a big deal.
Yeah. So walking into my first residential diploma, luckily it was at Bloomsburg, so it wasn't far away. But we met guys from New York State that we've become friends with over time. We've collaborated with their club. We've played them. We've gone up for training sessions. They've gotten me to do some guest appearances for some things. So the value in itself, I mean, people will always say, oh, it costs this much money to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that was 2005, 2006, and we're still friends today. We're still collaborating on things. My Premier group still sends emails making fun of each other, and checking in as to where everybody is at this point. So learning those, and it was, learning from people that were very, very good at their craft, and them teaching us, and then learning from all of these guys that you were, matched up with. And then the off hours of sitting in a dorm room and lining up soccer balls or cones and creating fake scenarios really allowed us to become students of the game, and something that I think takes a while to get good at. And it was really neat going through those courses and taking those courses and learning things, even the goalkeeper courses that we didn't really know enough about, but to be able to spend time learning those parts of those positions and those parts of the game really just made me a better coach. But it also offered my players a little bit more from me when I'm doing my instruction.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like a lot of this stuff through practice, hundreds, thousands of sessions and working with teams and groups and, all that we do, like, I think now we often take for granted some of the knowledge that we started off with at those courses. Because when I would go be there, like, oh, it was almost, this is brand new. Like, this is how you teach. This is how you coach a game of soccer. And it was like, at the time was like, it was really, now I feel like it's just ingrained in much of what we do, but still back then it was definitely really beneficial.
I think the growth that I've had from the beginning stages to now is unbelievable. I can still picture some of my first pre-seasons with the girls program and the things that I had them do. And I look back and I'm thinking, man, I had no idea what I was doing as a coach. One of the camps and the clinics I was doing with St. Benedict's at the time, traveling across the country to do camps with this program. And I was doing things that I probably would tell my coaches that if they did again, I would fire them because it was just not soccer and it wasn't going to benefit anybody. But during that time, I didn't know any better. I was just learning as I went and using things that I thought that were helpful. So coaching education for me was probably the single most important value that I have as my career in the coaching ranks. But I also think a lot of the colleagues that we've shared and learned from and some of the coaches that we worked under have been an absolute influence in how we have used our trade and how we have developed as coaches. Then I also really focus on other sports. I know nothing about football and baseball and all those other sports, but I watch those coaches and how they interact, and I find what they do and how they do it. The message that they're sending, it might be different, but it's something that is very useful for us as coaches. So I do attend other sporting events and watch things because I feel like that helps enhance our ability as coaches.
Yeah, actually, was just reading today. There's lots of ways to categorize coaches, but one of the things I read was the transactional coach. Here's the X's and O's. This is what we're going to do today, and we're going to teach. And then there's that transformative coach, which is that whole person. And I think, I don't know about you, but I feel now like I feel more responsibility as somebody leading players to be that transformative coach. How was your day today? How's school? How things at home? Did you eat well? Like this goes way beyond, how to be a right winger and playing against somebody who's, got a good left back. You know what I mean? And I think that, like you said, being in and around other sports and other coaches, like those relationships may well turn out to be pivotal for kids, potentially more than the transactional piece. They just know that you're there for them.
Yeah, I mean, times have changed. Back in the day, I remember my coaches, if I would go down hurt or if I was coming into a session grumpy, they just told me to be tough. Those times have changed where, there is that value right now of that personal value. You belong, and I want to know more about you as an individual, so that way we could figure out how we can enhance your ability on the field. And there's a true value of individuals at this time that I don't think was given to us as young players, but I feel as though being an educator, that's always been something that I put first and foremost is valuing the individual. One of the terms we use now is that I value you more than I value the game of soccer, and I'm here for you as a player, but more importantly as an individual. And if you know that, then maybe you'll be okay in the long run, and maybe we'll be okay at soccer.
Yeah. I remember like the Messiah, right? Soccer comes last. It's the first day of preseason. And really, and I didn't. Oh yeah, okay, it does, and it's all about relationships first. I do remember you have a phrase for anyone that watches this that I always remember you doing with the young players, and that was the phrase where they would, that might be 10 or 11 years old and get bumped and fall over, and they're about ready to lose it, and you would go, "You're okay," and the kids would go, "I guess I am."
Screaming before they felt it. You're okay. Yeah. And as long as they knew that I saw it and they can move on, then life is good for them.
As opposed to get up.
Yeah.
Ron, hit the weight room. All right. So
Oh,
the next few questions I've got are they just popped out my head.
oh,
There's no real sort of mapping out or
should have
plan for them.
stretched for this one.
Yeah, they're a bit all over the place, but
Okay.
and there's some big ones in here.
All right.
So how does our region, North Central Pennsylvania, relate to the big picture? National pools, pro pathways, decision makers. For example, how do we have a voice? Are we connected, or are we like probably many other states and many other areas of the country, just kind of doing our own thing? Is there a connection? Thoughts on that? Are we attached to a really big plan here or not?
I don't think we are. So the unique geographical piece for us is that we're central Pennsylvania. There is a 3-hour drive to Pittsburgh and a 3-hour drive to Philly. If we're looking at Buffalo, New York, or even the city, it's another 3 or 4 hours. So based on our geographical area, we are kind of put in a situation where if we don't search for what's new, the new trends, or we don't put out messages that, hey, we belong, then we will easily be left aside. In the soccer world, everybody talks about all these new programs and these MLS Next and, the national pool and all these things. At one point, I worked for the EPYSA ODP program out of Philly, and that was the eastern part of the state. And so, they were trying to incorporate the centralized part. They created a zone over here for us to utilize, and we just didn't have the kids or the information to share with them. And so, after 2 years, that kind of dissipated into, hey, just if they want to try out for ODP, they need to come to us.
Yeah.
The same thing happened when we got involved with PA West. Ironically, I was working for PA West as well, and they created our own little region or sub-region over here, and they would select the better players to go out to Pittsburgh and have a tryout with them or have a run with them. But maybe we saw 1 or 2 players ever getting that opportunity, and it didn't really last very long because, again, we had to fight for it, and if we didn't fight for it and we didn't push it, then nobody knew where we were.
Right.
But then you start to look at those programs, and the NPL and the MLS Next and all of these things. In order for our players to go get them, we have to drive hours upon hours. And when we get there, is the training better? I don't know if it is. Maybe the players are better. They're a different level. But are those coaches more experienced? I don't believe they are. Are they giving something different, the message different than what we might be giving? They might have a different way about it. But I think what we have in this central region, if we look at the coaches that have really put the time into it and are doing the right things, we're doing everything that you would see anywhere else. I have some friends in the college game, and we'll sit down and we'll talk, and they mimic the same types of terms and phrases that we mimic and instruction that we give to our players. And I've had coaches at the highest level that were working with the national teams and having the best players in the country play for them, and it's all the same message. We just are very, very unlucky based on our geographical area.
Yeah. I mean, I think you alluded to it a little bit in terms of, I think one of the frustrations for me is because we are in America and we're in a free market. There have been multiple pathways and multiple pinnacles, and I think that can become really confusing. NPL, ECNL, MLS Next, the old academy programs, strong high school programs, ODP, the EDP system, Great Lakes Alliance groups, different state associations. The list goes on.
Right. And we've had our hand on a lot of those situations based on a lot of our friends and a lot of our colleagues. I have a friend that lives down south, and, his daughter was looking to move on and looking at ECNL and some of these opportunities. And the commitment value for it all, the price tag for it all, for what the end result for her was going to be, or is going to be, where she wants to wind up in college and what she wants to do. She's spending a lot of money to have an experience and put herself in a really pressurized area.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily making these teams. And the thing is, where is it getting players? Where's it getting our kids?
Yeah.
And so we have all of these things that we kind of throw out as the next best thing in America. Zlatan Ibrahimovic said it the best. In America, my child has to pay $7,000 to be on a club team.
Mhm.
Everywhere else, the academies bring these kids in, and the financial money is there, and it's taken care of. I have a friend out in New York City. His name is Wilson. I played for him as a kid. He's won a couple of national championships with his club team in the city. Everything that they do is sponsored. Another friend of mine in Suffolk, Long Island, I think it is, just was in the national final. Everything that his players do, or all the kids on his team, they're
Mhm.
all sponsored. None of them
Yeah.
pay for that, and their exposure and their opportunities are unbelievable. So there's
Yeah.
got to be a better way. The market has to change somehow.
Well, that's tough. I mean, if you look at what Iceland have done and some of the other smaller countries, the Netherlands, 2.5 million people, and the strength there, a lot of it comes from the government, the state essentially providing opportunities as much as anything else. But we're in this sort of free market private venture, and we're kind of left to our own devices. I mean, I've joked, but it's if I was to say to you, let's go form a club and we call it Veltri Orton United, and we're going to go take 8-year-olds and charge them $20,000, and we're going to call them elite, and we're going to travel around the world, and we're going to play 11v11 with 7 and 8-year-olds. Who's going to stop that? Right?
Yeah. But then the other thing is, you're looking at these programs that exercise that mentality. I want my kid playing 24 hours, 7 days a week. I want them in a tournament every weekend. I want our parents to be driving all over the place to get them to do these things. And at 7 and 8-year-olds can't do it. They can't handle it. 9, 10, 11-year-olds can't do it. I've got 15-year-olds who are struggling to maintain their schoolwork and their after school athletics. So it's one of those things. There's got to be a balance, but we think that other sports like baseball, you need to play every day, and there needs to be competition every day in order for us to get to the next level. Well, we don't compete like baseball competes. We play a 90-minute game, or 2 30-minute halves, where there's a lot of pressure on the body, the joints, and all these things that have to grow as we get older. So if we put our kids into those situations and we burn them out, then we're left without kids playing soccer when they're supposed to be excelling. What do they say? 7 to 12 is developmental, but beyond that is when we start to see the rewards of all of that developmental time. 14, 15, 16, when they're starting to mentally adapt to the game, and 17, 18, when they're supposed to be getting ready for the college ranks.
Yeah.
We'll burn them out when they're 7.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I don't necessarily attach any blame, if that's the right word, to any organization or parents or groups. It's tough because there's just a swirl of information. I think I would be. This is my other question for you. My next one: if you were to have the biggest voice regarding soccer in the USA, what would you say? And knowing that could well be some change. And I think for me, I think there just needs to be actually a bit more governance from whoever to say, hey, Orton and Veltri United with 8-year-olds going around the country. No, you can't do that. but no one will, and I'm exaggerating.
There's no leadership.
No, but overall, that could well happen. We've got 6-year-olds, in central Pennsylvania traveling to Pittsburgh for games. Like someone should come in. Like there should be this big cloud above us. US Soccer say, whoa, stop doing that. What are you doing?
I think though. So, in a lot of other countries, there is that direction, the pyramid of sorts.
Right.
Whereas in America right now, who is in charge? And we saw the debacle of the U.S. men's national team in terms of who is in charge and the relationships of those coaches, those parents, those alumni, and the federation itself. We just saw the U.S. women's national team go through its worst tournament under guidance and in the World Cup, and coaches are being let go, and administrative people are being let go. But who is in charge? Who is there to say that these are our guidelines. This is what we're looking for. There's just so many different programs that say we are your pathway to the national team.
Yeah.
And because there are so many different people or too many entities trying to identify as that, then everybody thinks, well, so-and-so told me this, or I read this.
Right.
And so we don't have a clear-cut road as to what it should look like and the reasons behind it and, the stats behind it. And so what we end up with ideally is, are we really getting the best players for the women's national team, the men's national team to compete in a World Cup or the Olympics? I don't know if we are, because I don't know if they're looking in some of the areas around this country that they can find them. And because we're such a global country and we have citizenship in Germany or England or wherever else we're grabbing players from based on something simple as military, right? Are we really getting the best players to play on our national team or in the national pool?
Right.
And then you have all these colleges that are recruiting these players and saying, we'll give you money for this or we'll give you money for that. And that's another thing that I would change. So that would be a two-part question, because we have conversations about colleges with my high school groups all the time. And I think the idea or what is being placed in front of our parents and our players is just false. It's fake. And they're given these incorrect guidelines that they're trying to follow because they don't know any better. And therefore they're approaching us and we're telling them truths, and then we are the bad guy. So one thing I would change is the American standard and who's in charge, and finding the best athletes to wear the badge. And two, the whole college debate of, is my kid going to get a full ride scholarship to play at a Division I college?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even now, there are now 3 competing interests for the administration of youth soccer. There's USYS, there's US Club Soccer, and now MLS are involved with MLS Go. And I'm not saying any one of those 3 entities are bad. They're all good.
But do they all meet at the end of the day? And are they creating what would be considered that national pool? I don't think they are.
Right.
And I think
even at the grassroots level, even at the grassroots level, MLS Go looks cool. Jerseys, and we have it at the center with the NBA junior program and the NFL program, and it's kind of cool. But again, like for parents and for us, like it's confusing enough as people inside the industry, let alone parents. Like, okay, so a rec program that's being run by a local community organization through the state association is now no good. We're gonna do MLS Go. It's and then, or US Club Soccer, you could form your own league. So there are 3 competing administrative arms for youth, for kids under the age of 10 and beyond, right? But that there alone is, I think, problematic. I'm not saying they don't do good work, just saying that's confusing.
No, I'm guessing there's some great instructors. There's probably a great curriculum, but it's got to be confusing to the outside world, and I think that's what gives soccer a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, because it just doesn't have that. There's no direct link to any of them at the end of the day.
Yeah. And so, speaking of direct links, let me ask. Here's the next question. A few more questions. So, what? let me read it.
Yeah, that would be good.
I wrote here, what help do you need in your role right now, and where might that come from? And it could be you personally, or it could be any coach USA. Like, what do you think's out there? Where do you think coaches are looking for help, or what things are they lacking? Not lacking, but like these things need typically the things we see that the coaches need help with. And where do you get it from?
Yeah, so I am not a professional coach. I don't claim to be a professional coach. I've just been doing it a long time, and so one of the things, I applied for the Master of Coach diploma a couple of years ago, probably during my sabbatical, just because I wanted to see, one, if I could get into it and get accepted into it, because I felt maybe that there was a chance that I wouldn't be good enough to get into that program. And two, because I really wanted to participate in it. And what it offered was something that I think any coach in this country who wants to be a better coach would be a reason why somebody would want to do it. They offer a year-round program, so it's a year-long course where you develop a curriculum or you develop a relationship with some type of other program or within yourself, and then you are analyzed by someone, by like a mentor that comes and watches your sessions, or you video your sessions, and you send it to them, and they analyze it and they give you feedback. Too many times I watch coaches and I want to provide feedback because it's just part of the game. And I feel as though that, hey, I'm just trying to help you because this is what I see. And they don't take the information. They take it as, what do you think? You're better than me. And I am the first person to say, please watch my session. What do you see? Please watch my game. What do you see as a coach? Because maybe you see it through a different lens than I do. So as a coach, I'm always looking for feedback. I'm always talking to other people about how they would approach things, or what would they do to approach a situation or a formation or whatever we're doing. And, you know, am I sending the wrong message? Am I getting the point across? What's another way to do it? I did it today when I received the message from one of my players. First thing I did was I went to another coach. His name is Danny Orton. And because I respect him, I said, what would you do in this situation? And he gave me his response, and it was perfect because it was along the lines that I was thinking, but it was worded just a little bit differently. And it kind of made me think about the way I was going to approach this kiddo with her question or with her response to what I had to say. So something as a coach I would like would be to have somebody mentor me. Even though I've been doing this for, feels like 100 years, I know where I stand as a coach. And I will always need help, depending on, especially as I get older, I'll need help being able to see the field, because I can't really see and hear things. So those two things I will need something to be diagrammed for me constantly, and an interpreter in my ear helping me out. But no, and I think that a lot of younger coaches don't appreciate that, or don't see the value in that, because maybe they're starting out and they might have been a good player or whatever. But if I were to go back in time, I would definitely ask for more mentoring. And I think that master program, the master coach diploma, would have been a really good thing for me. But at the time I was shifting gears and I wasn't as involved as I had become again. So, yeah.
I think too, you know, the idea of mentoring or sharing of ideas, I think is crucial. Because it's like in business, we only know what we know, you know. It's like the number of times, I mean, I think it was only 2 years ago I realized that someone told me if I walk backwards when putting cones down, they're more likely to be in a straight line, right? I mean, true story. What a dummy. Like this. But not only that, but just the managing of players and managing of emotions and managing of parents and managing of expectations. I think those conversations are hard. And I would also say that probably it sounds like something like that program, you know, or any sort of mentor type program. If you're able to experience a degree of, you know, bouncing ideas off someone that's not from your landscape, you know, someone that's someone's in the Chicago, someone's in Florida, you know what I mean? Something entirely different. I think we'll get a really different vantage point. You know what I mean? Like if you've got, if State College, Pennsylvania only coaches in this way, and no one from State College, Pennsylvania or Lock Haven, Pennsylvania ever goes outside of that, then it will never change, right? You're relying on change from within those individuals. So going outside of that, I mean, it could be, you know, and obviously the internet helps, but I think that's a really good point. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So a couple of heavy questions to finish.
Heavy?
Not heavy.
I thought the last couple
what does coaching bring to your life?
Ooh, that is heavy. I call it passing it back. At one point I was in the process of creating a book, and I think I'm still evaluating that process of allowing people to share their experiences of why soccer or what soccer gave them. And soccer gave me a lot of different things that it probably would have changed my life if I didn't have it. You know, growing up, my life was what it was, but if I didn't have soccer, I probably would have been in a different situation than I am now.
Mm.
So coaching allows me to give it back to the people and to kids that I don't know, and to friends that I've known. It allows me to be able to be a part of something that I've always hold close to my heart. So the opportunity to go out in the field and do a session with 7 or 8 year olds or 13 or 14 year olds, boys or girls, speak. I had a chance to go to Lock Haven University and speak in front of their team real quick before they ran off for their dinner session after their double session. And just that 5 minutes that I had to speak to them, that part of the game and being able to coach and talk about the game, it's everything that it's everything that I would ever want. I'm very lucky to be able to coach in a couple of different facets of life, and I'm pretty lucky to meet the people that I've met, the alumni association that I work with, and the kids that I have had. They get back to me on certain things, or I get a message here and there, and it means the world to me because that means that we kind of made a difference.
Yeah.
So just being outside and kicking soccer balls, whether it's with 2 kids or 20 kids or, with a couple of friends of mine coaching, it's just a lot of fun, and it kind of keeps me young. I can't do what I used to do, but I can still be out there, and there's just something about it. You just love it. It's hard to put into words. That's deep.
Yeah. It's people, right?
People. I like people.
Well, I mean, there's chat in business about having an area, a big idea of impact, and I think if you're working with kids, we're obviously in the soccer hemisphere, but obviously you're a teacher as well. But like any sport, you're around kids. That's you're having a big impact on lives. I mean, that's way more important than pushing widgets around.
Yeah, as long as you're doing it right and your message is the right message, then I think we're creating an opportunity for growth, development, and making good humans.
Yeah. All right. Well, that sounds so nice. So the next question is, what frustrates you?
My frustrations come from when we have the ability to execute situations and we don't execute them on the field. That's my frustrations. So playing in a game or in a session and we don't necessarily do the little things that we're supposed to do, not because we can't do them, but because of whatever the scenario brings. That's one of the things that frustrates me because I've worked with teams that have been very, very good, but we haven't been able to be the very best because we just didn't put enough time into executing the things right or correctly. The other thing that bothers me is there's a lot of people in the soccer world who have come into the soccer world one way or another, but believe that they know more about soccer than the soccer people. And, I'm not going to bash on parents. I'm not going to bash on, them because that's not fair to them. And they're just trying to catch up with the times. But there are a lot of people in the world who all of a sudden become soccer coaches or soccer people. And they may have not had soccer in their life prior. Maybe their kids all of a sudden have come into the game and they've become coaches at the youth level. And next thing you know, they're not open to any type of the information that you could provide, or they think they know everything and then they try to push you out. And that bothers me that there are people that have put their lives work into it, who are pushed aside or not listened to when it comes to these new people who are brought into it. And they sort of have big egos. And it's unfortunate because some of the things they might be teaching or showcasing are incorrect. And they're taking away that developmental stage. And I know, some of the programs that we have, parents have to be involved. But if that's the case, then, I just wish they'd be open to a little bit more than information that's being shared to them or given to them. Too many people have become professional coaches. And I'm not sure how they do that, where they become professional and experienced coaches when they've only been at it for 2 or 3 years. So that frustrates me because that makes the soccer picture look a lot different. and it changes the landscape of what the perception is of people looking into the soccer landscape.
Well, it negates the work that you put in, right?
Absolutely. And I don't want people to think that I think I'm the best at what I do. I have so much room for growth, but I also have put in a lot of time and effort to get to where I am.
Yeah.
And I don't like to brag, and I won't brag about those things, but it's hard to listen to other people brag when they don't have the soccer background that we might have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think? Next question. What do you think players and parents need right now?
They need a lot of guidance.
Yeah.
Ooh, they need a lot of guidance. They need information, but they also need to have patience with the world of soccer and how the world of soccer works. Kids need to understand that if they have a soccer professional or someone who is, in charge of a club, let's say, who's been a part of a club for a long time, they know the ins and outs of the program. They know the ins and outs of things. They just have to have the patience with those coaches, that those coaches are going to guide them in the right direction. They can't jump ship. Unfortunately, soccer's become, what club do you play for and how long have you been there? And we've seen kids jump every 2 years to a new club where they are now traveling to Pittsburgh or Buffalo or Rochester or Philly because they have burnt every bridge they've been on in the local community, up to an hour's drive. They've club hopped, where they've put themselves in a situation where they just didn't like the way that process was working, so they've gone. They need to have patience. I think too many times we look to go bigger and better before we just settle down and try to find a pathway that works best for the family. And unfortunately, in the world of soccer, we have players who become very, very big about themselves, and they jump ship very, very fast because maybe some clubs include all players in the developmental stages. Because again, you don't know what a player is going to look like when they're 16, 17, 18, when they're 7, 8, 9, and 10. We have some amazing stories of kids that could run, and next thing you know, they're an all-state player at one of their high schools. They've gone through the process with us. And granted, we push on really good players when it's time, but we also have players who move a little bit too early and think that they're going to move on faster than what their pathway deserves. And next thing you know, they hate soccer.
Yeah. I've been thinking a bit over the last few days about, the idea of this feedback loop for kids, and then therefore parents, and we've lived in this instant gratification world of social media and overall, and things I won't say been handed to kids, but there's been lots of opportunities and things are okay. But all of a sudden you're not rostered. All of a sudden you don't play so much. All of a sudden, all the things that we talk about for youth sports that are there to help kids navigate that, dealing with those little minor disappointments, getting over it, showing resilience, showing grit. I mean, right now, any amount of resistance or any amount of like a challenge, people are done. They're out. Like, it's over, and not necessarily club hopping or whatever else, but like in that situation, they can't get themselves out. I'm not going to go fight and work hard. Like, well, what are we doing? This isn't how it should be, guys. Like, that's been for me, for the kids especially. Like, no, real life doesn't look like that. It looks like challenges. It looks like obstacles. All the things that all the books talk about and your counselors talk about, your teachers talk about. This is a sport that provides you that. And the moment you get a little one, you are done.
Yeah. So that's the message I shared when I went and spoke at Lock Haven.
Yeah.
I was an all-state player in high school, one of the better players on my team and in my league and in the area. So I had options moving forward. And so, I chased the American dream of, here's a scholarship, here's MLS's down the road, this and that. But I wanted to go to Lock Haven. That was where I really wanted to be. And I found out really quickly at Lock Haven that my role as a player was number 18. I was number 18, and that meant I worked my butt off during the season, and I came in on games. Maybe I started a game here or there, but more than likely I was a super sub that came on and tried to help the team in one way or another. And my junior year, I remember working my tail off. Any opportunity I got to go in or start a game, I smiled. I worked my butt off. I tried my best, knowing that, there were a ton of players on that team that were going to start over me because they were better. And so I put a lot of work into the winter training. I put a lot of work into the spring. I came in unattached. And I remember in the spring that year, I got called down to the office, and it was one of those moments where I didn't realize walking down that this could be it for me at Lock Haven. That I could be cut. And luckily I turned the other way, and I wound up being told that I was on scholarship and that I'd receiving scholarship for the next season, my senior year. And it was probably the most proud I've ever been because, I worked extremely hard to get any time in a game at Lock Haven. And, if I started, it meant that I was either crushing it at practice or the game before, where about 7 guys were injured and there was no chance that they would ever make it in. And they needed me to play just because I was next on the roster. Yeah. But I knew that based on the team itself and the players that I was playing with, I knew my role. And had I not known my role going into that, and had I complained about that role and went to the coach and complained about it, that meeting would have been way different at the end of the spring. Yeah. I would have been in a whole different situation and maybe packing my bags and looking for another school, or even just finishing off at Lock Haven without playing. But that was a mindset that I had to get through, from going from being one of the best players on my high school team, and then one of the best players in the first college I went to being a player that was coming off the bench with a chance of starting maybe 1 or 2 games that season. Yeah. So if players were people, parents were settled and just trust the process, and kids worked hard and didn't need that instant gratification, then maybe bigger and better things will happen for them. But yeah, it's tough to come into reality, and too many people we see can't handle that, and they either walk away from the project or they become a thorn.
Yeah. I wonder what the percentage of kids has changed from then to now in terms of sticking that out. More or less 3 years of in and out and having to work hard to get that senior award. Like, you're now going to start on scholarship, be the guy. I wonder how many of those stories were existent in existence 23 or 4 years ago versus now.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't have the data. I'm just throwing it out there because it just seems that, from what I've seen, a lot of players that we've worked with, they just wobble, like, whoa, like, and I look at them and say, "You okay? Like, this is part of it." We had a thing today I spoke about, and I try and find ways to catch the players, not catch them. That sounds like I'm being tricky or untrustworthy. But set them up to have to agree with the correct response. So today was, the idea of, when you get substituted, your number's up, and for sure you don't want to come off the field. And if you watch some of the guys on TV, Mo Salah 2 weeks ago, annoying, poor reaction. Dear Mo, you are a great player and a role model, just so you know. So I'm saying this to the players, and I said, if you react poorly to being substituted off, that's telling me that you're not supporting your teammate who's coming on next, right? I mean, you can't say no to that. Yeah, I guess you're right. So let's have a culture where we're not going to be. You'll deal with the disappointment. You'll get wound up. You'll want to get back on the field. There'll be good reasons for you at some point to come off. Maybe it's a rotation. Maybe you're tired. Maybe it's a matchup. Whatever it might be. Maybe it's not playing very well. But celebrate the next guy coming on, because if you can't celebrate the next guy coming on, that makes you selfish and all about you, right? We'll see how it goes. But the point being that a lot of these kids.
Ariyama?
What's that?
Gino Ariyama. I'm not saying the name right, but he's a UConn women's basketball coach, and he's won a ton of national championships. And he has a podcast where he talks about facial expressions on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
He has a camera that is videoing the players on the bench for their reaction. So if their reaction is that they're not getting in, or their reaction is they're not invested in the game, he sees that, and that body language is telling him that you're never going to get into the game.
Oh boy,
it's your body language, and so he could do that with 5 All-Americans, right? At the University of Connecticut, but that message should be clear. Like, everybody wants to be on the field, everybody wants to be a starting 11. But your reaction to those things of coming off the bench, or maybe not starting, or not getting something that you want, unfortunately, that changes the dynamics and makes a lot of people look at you a little bit differently. If we had players who really were invested in the idea of team, coming off, they'd be the biggest cheerleader. Not starting, you'd be the biggest cheerleader. Because you would want that as a player, wouldn't you? On the field, you would want to have people cheering for you and supporting you and being happy that you're in there. But it's that self-gratification that I guess it's just being people. But it's tough watching it, because we see kids that it takes them from being a hero to absolutely changes them to becoming somebody that they're really not. Maybe that's who they really are, and then that's a whole different conversation.
I finished my questions.
And I've interrupted you enough, so this has been fun.
So we should do it again, because there's still loads more to talk about. But
you said you finished your questions.
Well, I know, but like at another time.
Okay.
Because people watch this on the old YouTube. Like if it's 4 hours long, they might not.
Well, I feel bad for anybody who's going to watch this, but maybe you and I, if we watch it enough, we'll get enough views for it to become certified or whatever. Verified. What's it called?
I don't even know. I'm a novice, but all right. Well, I'm going to end the recording, and then we can chat after it stopped recording, if I can press the right button. But Ryan Veltri, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers. End recording.